Hello, welcome to Indie Tutorials. My name is Guillermo and I would like to thank the patrons supporting this channel. Today we are going to take a look at creating integration between the RPG character animation pack, mechanic animation pack from explosive asset and make a simple dialogue to showcase the interaction and the dialogue system in ORK Framework. So without further ado, let's get into it. I have got here into a new Unity 2021 3.1 version, both the explosive RPG character mechanic animation pack free and the Game is Love ORK Framework free version as well. So both already installed. I have downloaded as well the tutorial assets for the UI section from ORK Framework, just to have it ready here for the implementation. And this is the demo scene from the character mechanic animation pack. The first thing I will do is create a new folder inside the tutorial assets and call it scenes, and I will add a copy or copy this, save this scene as inside this folder. Tutorial assets, scenes, and let's name this one ORK RPG character. Okay, so once again what we want to do is to make this RPG character, this is the one here in the scene, to be a ORK Framework combatant. So ORK Framework requires the combatant to be spawned in the scene to easily convert it into the ORK player. Otherwise we need to go with some workarounds, but the easiest way to do that will be to, let me collapse all these components, to use the standard ORK Framework approach. Alright, so inside our tutorials folder, let's create another folder here and let's call it prefabs. Let's click on the RPG character itself, and I'm going to break the prefab or unpack the prefab. Then I will drag it onto my prefab folder, but before that I will just rename it so we know that this is the ORK RPG character. So once the prefab is created, I will just delete it from the scene. We can see from the camera though that it's trying to find the RPG character below this game object, but it's something that we are going to tackle on the road. But for now, let's remove the ORK RPG character. Delete the game object itself, and what we need to do is to add our ORK Framework spawner and also the game starter. So I'm selecting here the scene root and I click add ORK game starter. It will create a new game object with the ORK game started component, and we can see that the start game is already ticked, so it will start, initialize everything. The position doesn't matter at all. For the spawner, I will select again the main scene, and in this case I will click on create game object. Then I will start typing spawn point point. Now the position does matter. I will do uncheck the place on ground, and to be compliant with the position that the prefab had before, what I will do is to zero out the position. So let me click here on reset the transform and change the position in the Y to 180, like so. Then this is for the setup of the scene. Now if I go to the prefab itself, I can start working with ORK Framework in order to convert this prefab into a combatant. Right away, what I can do also is these GUI controls. This is the one we see here in the scene. We can disable this component altogether. It's up to you. I will do that too. And then I can close the scene wizard and open up the ORK Framework editor. So the first thing I want to do is under the base controls, ORK Framework requires or needs, if we are not going to use the pre-built, inbuilt player controls, then it requires us to tell it which controls ORK Framework needs to block when displaying dialogues or cutscenes or scene transitions, either at player level or camera. So in that case, we want to go into the ORK control settings. So I am in the base and control, game controls, ORK control settings, and if I scroll down, for the player controls I will choose none. We don't want any of the inbuilt player controls, and for the camera controls either, we don't want to follow, but none. There we go. The next step, of course, is to tell which components or mono behaviors are going to control the player and the camera. So we need to tell ORK Framework which controls we need to block. So now that we are in the player settings, we can scroll down and then we have these control behaviors. Let's click on add custom control, and the first one we want to block is the player, blocked by player, placed on player, and the component, the class name that is going to search. If we select here the RPG character, let me make some room. The component that we are going to block or disable when we start a dialogue or scene change is the RPG character input controller. So it's the input that we want to block. So let's start typing to see if the refactoring will find it. So RPG character input controller. There we go. Let's add, well, we don't need to change anything here because it's actually at the root of the game object. Let's add a new one, and in this case it will be blocked by camera and placed on the camera. Once again, if we select from the scene the camera game object, we see this camera controller. So let's change here from camera, if I can type, camera controller. Okay, I clicked on that field by mistake, so I will remove that one. So now ORK Framework knows which behaviors to block or disable when needed. Let's save the changes. And let's continue by creating the combatant. So click on combatant section, then combatant subsection, and let's click on the default combatant here. What I'm going to do here is to edit text and select or change the name of this default, and let's make something like RPG character. Click OK. And in the base settings, this is the prefab settings. This is where we need to connect the prefab that we have created, so ORK Framework will spawn that prefab for us. So let's drag this guy here. Let's save the settings. So we can leave the statuses as they are for now. It will just default to the default status value we have, HP, MP to 1. But now continue, and let's go to the schematic side. It's in the sections here, and let's create our spawn and join group schematic. So ORK Framework need to add this player to an active group, which is in the context of ORK Framework will be either the player group or the enemies group. So we start typing join group. Let's link the nodes up, and from the properties that we have here, the group origin will be actually the active player group, so that's okay. We can see that combatant or player group if we had a group by ID, but let's leave it as active player group. Then it's asking you, okay, which combatant we need to add to this player group. It's going to be our RPG character. We can leave all the other settings as they are, so it will learn the abilities that we have in the character combatant settings and so on and so forth. And lastly, what we need to do, of course, is to spawn the ORK player. So let's click here, spawn ORK player. Let's link it up, and where we want this combatant to be spawned, it will be in the spawn point 0. So this is the ID that we have here, spawn point 0. So here is the ID. Alright, so let's save this schematic. I will go to the tutorial assets. I will create a new folder, schematics, and I will name this one spawn player schematic. Okay, now we can close up the editor. We have the spawn point. We need to go into our ORK game starter, and here where we say start schematic asset is asking us to assign a schematic here, so we can do that and assign our spawn player schematic. If now we were to hit play, the combatant or the player has been spawned, and we can see in the hierarchy the RPG character. Down below it has the combatant component with the faction player, of course, some statuses and so on and so forth. So let me see. So if we start moving the character, I believe right now it's in the combat stance, that's why it's not rotating. Perhaps, but the camera already also detected, let me see the camera, to follow the RPG character, so we didn't need it to add any customizations in that regard. Let's see the console. There is one error message here in the RPG character, which is related to the target, this object. Probably this is causing this rotation issue. So let's try to figure out, to fix that out. The variable target of RPG character controller has not been assigned. So let's open up this script. I know this is referencing this target thingy here. Let's start play mode, and open up the script in Visual Studio. Okay, so now the script is open and we can see right away the line where it's throwing this error message that says set aim input and is expecting this target transform. If I click on F12 to go to the definition, is it here? If I click find references, I will see that it's called right away in the awake method, so it's not checking for any null reference. And I think the easiest way to clean this up is just checking whether the target is not null. So if target, which is a transform, is not null, then go ahead and do the set aim input. Later on we can reuse this set aim input logic, and instead of doing it like this, ORK Framework will send you which is the enemy target to target to. So let's minimize the Visual Studio editor and wait for Unity to compile, and click on play once again. And let me see if yes, I can use the gamepad yet again. The movement is not okay, so it actually is working now. So I believe it was related to the target. Yeah, it is actually working. I'm using the gamepad. Alrighty, so let's continue now and implement the interaction controller from ORK Framework. Let's say that we want to talk with this box here. So let me click on Ctrl P to leave the editor, play mode, sorry. And let's, yeah, this is the create small F to focus, yes. So we can see it has already a rigid body and a box collider, which is good because that can help us with the interaction. I will just raise it a little bit more in the air so it will drop not that fast. And we need to create now our interaction ORK Framework interaction controller. So for that, let's create a game object, or let me see if we can do it from the Machinum Sim Wizard. Create game object interaction controller 3D. There we go. So it's adding a new game object with an interaction controller component, a box collider, and a rigid body. So that's perfectly fine. Okay, the rigid body is set to kinematic as well as the box collider as a trigger. So what I want to do here in the interaction controller is interact with nearest and any interaction. Now for the position itself, because we are going to make a prefab out of this interaction controller, so let's zero out here in the X, Y and Z. Click on F to scene selected. There we go. And I will play a little bit also with the size of the collider itself. So I will say for X 1.5 is fine, 2 and 1, and for the Y I will raise it like 0.7, something like that should do. So let's make a prefab out of it and remove it from the scene. We have two options now: either to let ORK Framework to automatically add this interaction controller to the player itself or add it manually. I always prefer to do it manually so I have control, and because I know that I only have one ORK Framework player as the leader or main player. So I will open up the prefab in this case, and down below the ORK RPG character game object I will drag this interaction controller like so. So let me move around in the scene view, and what I want this interaction controller to be on front of the player itself, so I can move, and let's do a orthographic view, and let's move this a little bit up so it's not sticking in the ground, but and yet at a fit level. And we can see right away that perhaps it's too small, so let's increase the size in the Y to 2.4 and move it again a little bit up. Yeah, that will do. And save our prefab. So it said autosave already in this case, so let's move back. Now we have the player with the interaction controller, so we need to create something to interact with, and that's our box here. In order to interact with this box, we need to add an interaction machine to the box itself. So let me collapse all these components, and we can do it either by using the Machine on Scene wizard. So select add machine and start typing interaction machine, or also by adding a component here and selecting interaction machine. Okay, so now that we have our interaction machine in this game object, we can say to start this interaction, the start of this machine by interact. And when it interacts, we can assign a schematic to do a dialog flow. That's going to what we are going to build right now. Either way, we can test it out right away if there is the detection of the interaction. So let's save the settings here and click on play. So we can see here in the scene that the box is on the ground, so let's move towards the box, and nothing visible is happening. But if we were to click on the RPG character itself, and then we expand the hierarchy, and in the interaction controller we can see here the available interactions 1. So it is actually detecting that we have something to interact with. There we go. Right, so let's make some visual displays about this interaction itself. So in order to see how this prefabs, UI prefabs looks like, what we can do is in the scenes, in the tutorial assets, sorry, we have this UI environment scene. So I will add that to our project settings editor, and we have here in the UI area, environment. So every time we click on something that has a canvas, it will open into this special dedicated scene. So after that we can click on the UI box page, and it's asking me when I do that to import the Text Mesh Pro Essential, so I will do that. And now we can see, let me actually open up again. Now we have the text display. So this is our UI box page. In preparation for the video, of course, I also created this or bring up this interaction HUD from the tutorials assets in the ORK Framework tutorials section. So this is the interaction HUD that we are going to use. And for that, once again, I'm in the ORK Framework editor. We already set up our default UI box, and let's go now to the HUD section. Here let's make this default HUD and rename it to be our interaction HUD. Interaction HUD, not God, but HUD. The HUD type is going to be not information, but we can select from the drop down and select interaction. In this case, we want this interaction HUD to this auto display. We need to set the toggle state to enable by default. The HUD displayment, let's keep it as default, so it will be displayed at the position the prefab is created. In the display conditions, we can leave the interaction to be the interaction source to be the interaction control. So remember that we are triggering by the collision of our interaction controller and the rigid body in the create in this case. And if we scroll down in the what UI layer we want this prefab to be instantiated. So we want it in the HUDs layer, and the HUD prefab we want to instantiate is going to be our interaction HUD. So that's all we need to change here. Let's click on save and confirm, and let's test it out. So when we get close to the box, our interaction HUD should display, right? So let's go to the scene view and click on save after saving the changes in the scene. And there we go. You can see, well, still we have this issue with rotation, but we can see that the interact here is being displayed. So what I'm going to do now is to remove altogether this GUI so we can see better what we are doing. And now that we have the interaction with the box working, we can now create like a simple dialogue just to showcase how to display dialogues from ORK Framework, and also how it blocks player and camera control while we are in the dialogue itself. Okay, so for the dialogue box, I have created a variant of this UI box page. So if I were to double click to open up and looking at it in the 2D port view, is just like the UI box beige, but just stretch all the way at screen size to have this dialog at the bottom of the screen. And the next step then will be to open up again the Machinome editor. We can go to schematics, and from the schematic start building our dialog. For that we need to select the show dialog node. Let's link it up the nodes, and from here, of course, this dialog is going to be of type message. We can wait, or we need to actually select the wait. So we need to display the dialog or completely display the dialog before closing up this dialog flow. Next is asking us to which UI box we want to select, so we need to create actually an UI box for this section here. So let's add new data to the list, and let's go to the reference itself, and from here we can change the name to UI box beige bottom dialog. Very explicit. The UI layer we want this box to be displayed is not in the HUD layer, but in this case the layer 1, so it will be below HUDs. Then we need to assign the UI box prefab. If we don't do that, it will select the default UI box from the prefabs that we created earlier. So we assign our UI box page bottom, and that's pretty much we need to do here. So let's go back, or let's go back to the schematic itself, or save the changes first. So probably our schematic will be lost now. Okay, let's go to schematic. Okay, still there, which is good. So we have our UI box page bottom dialog now selected. So if we scroll down, there is this option speaker settings, which is basically telling us if we want to create a dialogue between two actors. So who's the speaker and who's the listener. In this case we tick that one, but then we need to add a actor as the speaker. So for that, let's go to the settings of this schematic, and down below, if you scroll, we can add actors. So let's add the speaker itself, which is going to be our ORK player. We can uncheck use scene object, and the second actor is going to be the box, so we can add another actor, and the box is actually the one running this schematic, so we can leave this machine object as it is. We can uncheck use scene object, but we could, for example, set a name for this actor, and here we can, for example, say amazing great, right? So if we go back to the show dialog, and in the use speaker, automatically for us the ORK player was selected. Now we can also tick on show name, so it will show the name of the actor that you remember we set it to RPG character in ORK in the combatant section. And if we click in the message content edit text, we can type something here, and let's say, oh, just a falling great. And typo, falling great. So after we close, we will have this OK button to close this dialog and continue the flow of this section. What we can do is let's copy this node and add a reply from the create itself. So in the show dialog, let's go up, and in this case the speaker is not going to be our ORK player but the amazing crate itself. We can leave the show name, and in the text let's add a reply like oh yes, so what, right? Something like that, nothing fancy. Let's see, that should be it. So let's save the schematic. Now go to the tutorials asset folder, schematic, and let's call this one like a simple dialog schematic. Let's close editor, and if we select now our create small, and in the interaction machine we have this slot here in the inspector, so let's click on that one and select the simple dialog schematic, right? Save the changes in the scene, and now we can test it out. So if I were to press the enter return key, I got the dialog, RPG character, oh, just a falling crate. If I click enter key again to accept this dialog, I will have the reply for the amazing crate, oh yes, so what? Now, where is this input for the accept dialog coming from? Let me stop. This is coming from the ORK Framework, base controls, input keys, accept, and if we scroll down, it's using the key code return key from the keyboard. Right. So that we conclude this first section or chapter of this integration with the RPG character mechanic animation pack. Later on we are going to dig deeper into how to implement real-time battles and perhaps turn-based battles, which are one of the best features of ORK Framework. So once again, thank you for watching and supporting the channel. See you on the next one.